Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe with Smokin Joe's BBQ. On today's video, I've got a very special sausage recipe, the German Bratwurst. Stay tuned. Alright, so I'm starting with a 10.5 bone-in pork butt. Now the first step is to remove all the meat from the bone here. So I'm just going to use my fillet knife here, try to find the bone and try to stay away from it. And cut this into smaller chunks, just small enough to fit down the throat of my grinder. Now while I'm cutting this up, I do want to talk about where this recipe came from, because it is a very special recipe, as I mentioned in the introduction. So as a very young man, I was probably 13 years old. I spent a summer in Germany with my aunt and uncle that was in the military, and I had bratwurst, and I fell in love with the flavor, not only of bratwurst, but just German food in general is really good. Something totally different than I've ever had. But the bratwurst sausage itself, I fell in love with it. Now years down the road, you know, every time our family had a cookout, you know, our cookouts consisted of steak and maybe chicken, never large meats like brisket or pork butt, anything like that. And it was never smoked, it was just over a grill. But one thing we always had were sausages. And where my grandmother lived, in central El Paso, there was a sausage shop right down the street. And at that point, it was owned by a gentleman named Joseph, a gentleman from Poland, really nice gentleman, and we would frequent his shop to buy sausages. Now, as I got older, I started buying sausages from Joseph and having them at cookouts. Now, one unique thing about Joseph back then was anytime you went into his sausage shop, he'd hand you a beer, okay? He gave you a beer the minute you walked in, and he'd just talk shop with you, take your order, and he'd start packing your order. So in 2005, Joseph, the owner of the sausage shop, started talking to my cousin Miguel and his wife Letty about buying the sausage shop. And at that point, they weren't ready. And sometime in 2006, they made the decision to go ahead and buy the sausage shop. So Joseph didn't want to sell the business to somebody that really didn't know the art of sausage making. So he committed an entire year working with my cousin to show him how to make all of his sausages. So my cousin Miguel and his wife Letty have owned the sausage shop since 2007, and they continue to make the same sausages that Joseph used to make. My personal favorite was always the bratwurst sausage, and of course the spicy sausages that they make, like the habanero sausage. So if any of you guys watching live in El Paso, make sure you stop by the sausage shop and get yourself some of their delicious sausages. And this recipe, I was talking to my cousin Miguel, and it wasn't difficult to have him give me the recipe, but you know, he's very protective of his recipes. And when I talked to him, he said, you know what, Joe, he's like, you're my cousin, I'm going to give you the recipe. And you know, I thought that was really nice of him, because he didn't have to. You know, I was just going to find a recipe off of my sausage recipe books and, you know, use one of those. But Miguel was nice enough to turn me on to this sausage. So, you know, it's an amazing sausage, so simple, and I cannot wait to show you guys how this is made. So now I'm just using my fillet knife, really thin fillet knife, and trying to remove as much meat from the bone as possible. There's some nice curves in here. And I got to tell you, using a fillet knife like this really helps. All right, so I've got most of the meat off of this bone right here. I'm going to go ahead and weigh things out and put the recipe together, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I did end up with exactly 10 pounds of pork. I'm going to go ahead and grind this up. Remember, never start your grinder dry. And I'm using a foot pedal with the 4.5mm die right here. Here we go. All right, that probably took maybe 45 seconds to grind up. So I'm just gonna grab some of this meat that I've already ground up and pass it through my grinder just to grind up all of the pork that's inside the auger right there. So here we go. All right, and that was it. I'm just gonna grab the little bit of meat that stays right here. See this right here? Now this is already ground up, okay? So just go ahead and use that. Remember, that's part of our weight. All right, so I've got the meat all ground up, and this is a very simple but delicious recipe. And I highly recommend, if you guys have never made sausages before, to make this recipe right here. Number one, it's super simple. Number two, it is a fresh sausage, which means we are not going to be adding any curing salt to the sausage. Now, I do want to mention that my cousin uses tablespoons and ounces for his recipe ingredients. Now, he did try to show me over the phone, and I understand it, but not enough to try it on this recipe. So I converted everything into grams to make it easier for me. But I got to tell you, I am going to learn his units of measurements, especially when it comes to making sausage. So I'm starting with 1.3% kosher salt, 0.6% black pepper. This is a ground black pepper. I'm using 0.1% ginger. And I did sift these. That way you don't have any clumps or lumps. I'm using 0.4% nutmeg. And as far as the dry ingredients, guys, that is it. Super simple recipe. Now, one secret ingredient that is in bratwurst that I had no idea are eggs, okay? So I'm using 6 eggs, 6 large eggs for this recipe. So because we are using the eggs, we will not be adding any water to this mixture. So can you guys guess what the binder is in this recipe? That's right, these eggs. So now we're just gonna mix it up. And I gotta tell you, this already smells amazing, okay? Super simple ingredients, really easy recipe. So I'm just gonna mix this by hand for probably 10 minutes. Make sure we get some really nice protein extraction. You want that mixture to stick to your hands really nice and sticky. And I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got my sausage mixture all mixed up. Got a really nice consistency, really nice and tacky. Look at that, that's what you want. Now make sure when you're stuffing your canister, you pack it in really nice and tight, no air pockets, okay? Remember, this is only 10 pounds, and I believe I can fit 25 pounds of sausage mixture inside this canister. So pack it in really nice. And I gotta tell you, this smells delicious already. It's not even cooked. Definitely has those bratwurst aromas going on. All right, I got my canister loaded up. Now let's load it onto my stuffer here. Just like that. Remember to lube up your seal on your piston. Just using a little bit of olive oil. And that little pro tip I gave you guys on my last sausage video of loosening up the piston, maybe 2 or 3 threads, that'll get the remaining sausage mixture that stays on the bottom of the canister. All right, let's install our horn. I'm using about a 3/4 inch horn for these sausages. All right, go ahead and lower your piston. I am using a foot pedal right here. All right, so I've got my casing right here. Now I'm using 32 to 35 millimeter casings. This is a preloaded casing available through PS Seasoning. It has been soaking in warm water for about an hour or so now. Really simple load, as you guys can see. Now each of these casings will hold 15 pounds of sausage. I'm only making 10 pounds, so I'm going to have some casing left over. Especially the way I stuff these casings, really nice and tight. So tie a knot, nice tight knot. Feel your casings nice and tight. Now I have my stuffer on a medium fast setting, but again I can control the speed with my foot. Now we do have an air pocket. Make sure you have your sausage picker nearby. Pop those casings, just like that. A lot of people like to use a knife as well. Use the back of a knife, and you can just tap the casing like that, and that'll pop the casing, just like that. Okay? All right, and that's it. We are done. Pull your casing out a little bit and make a tight knot right here. Just like that. Now if you get in the air pockets like right here, simply grab your sausage picker right here and pop those air pockets, okay? All right, so the last step is to go ahead and link our sausages. Now my cousin at the sausage shop likes to make his sausages 7 inches. In fact, he's got a t-shirt that says he's got the best 7 inches in El Paso, so I'll leave that to you guys. So measure out 7 inches, measure out another 7 inches, and pinch right here, and then you want to twist, okay? And twist that casing until your sausage, or your bratwurst in this case, is nice and tight, okay? Look at that, nice and plump. That's exactly what you want. Measure out 7 inches, pinch, 7 inches, pinch, and then just twirl until that casing is nice and tight. You don't want it to pop on you, and it will. Just twist until that casing is nice and tight, just like that. All right, I'm going to twist up the rest of these sausages, and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got all the bratwurst linked up. So at this point, these bratwurst are ready to eat. What I like to do is throw them in the fridge overnight. That allows these casings right here, right in between every link, to kind of dry up a little bit. That way when you cut it with your scissors, it's not going to unravel on you. So I'm going to toss these in my fridge overnight. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you guys how I cook these. Stay tuned. All right, so it's the very next day, and these sausage casings have dried up nicely. And look at the twist right in between every link is nice and dry. So at this point, what I like to do is snip the casing fairly close to the bratwurst, just like that. Now this one has a long twist right here. Again, just fairly close to the brat, just like that. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys how I cook these. This was something that was recommended by my cousin several years ago on how to cook bratwurst. And again, it's important that we stick to those original recipes, right? Just like this recipe for these bratwurst right here, there's a recipe for cooking them as well. Now you can definitely just grill these if you wanted to, but I think that the way we're going to be cooking these is the absolute best way to enjoy a German style bratwurst. Alright, so I've got my cast iron pan here filled with beer. Now use whatever your favorite beer is. You're going to have a lot of people tell you to use a dark beer. I like to use what I drink, and I drink Lone Star, so that's what we're going to be using for this recipe right here. So I'm just going to grab a few of these links. Now you don't want your beer boiling hot, okay? Just a slight simmer. So I'm going to grab about 5 of these. Alright, so I'm going to boil these brats for about 15-20 minutes. What I'm looking for is a nice white color. They're already kind of turning white. So as soon as these are ready, I'll bring you guys right back. Alright, so I just pulled the brats out of the boiling beer, and this is what you want. You want a nice white bratwurst, and we aren't done. We're going to head outside and grill these. Stay tuned. Alright, so as you can see, I've got my Weber kettle fired up. And this was some spent charcoal that I already had in my Weber kettle. This is Jealous Devil. I normally use it 2 or 3 times before it's completely in the ashes. So next we're just going to simply place our bratwurst right on the grill. And what we're looking for are some nice grill marks on these brats. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when I was younger, I spent some time in Germany. And over there, they serve their bratwurst just like this, okay? They just boil them, and they serve them to you just like this. They don't grill them. Grilling them adds another depth of flavor to the brats that's unbelievably tasty. Now, since we did boil these broths for 15-20 minutes, they're almost 100% cooked. So all we gotta do is finish them off on this grill. And again, we're just looking for some nice grill marks and some nice flavor as well. Just like that, look at that. That's exactly what you want right there. All right, so I'm gonna finish cooking these up and we'll see you guys inside. All right, and just like that, these bratwurst are ready and they look and smell absolutely amazing. So I'm just gonna grab one of these and cut it so you guys can see it. Look at that. Nice white center. Perfect looking bratwurst, nice and juicy as well. These are going to be absolutely delicious. So I'm gonna show you guys how I prep my bratwurst right here. So I've got a simple potato roll. Grab you one of these small brats. Next, I like to throw some spicy brown mustard. Enough spicy brown mustard, just like that. And you cannot have a brat without some fermented cabbage, aka sauerkraut. Look at that. Oh yeah, let's bite into this bad boy. All right, so first we've got to bite into this bratwurst just by itself. Look at that. Perfect looking bratwurst. They're still really hot. I'm probably gonna burn my mouth, but this has got to be worth it. Here we go. Wow. You can definitely taste the nutmeg and the ginger. It's crazy how these simple ingredients produce such a tasty sausage. All right, so now the moment you guys have all been waiting for, our brat dog, or what do you call this? Is it still a bratwurst or is it considered a brat dog at this point? We've got that bratwurst, spicy brown mustard, that warm sauerkraut. This is going to be delicious. Here we go. I am blown away on how tasty this is. I gotta tell you, this recipe is so simple. As I mentioned earlier, if you're a beginner sausage maker, give this recipe a try. Number one, it's so simple. Number two, it's a fresh sausage. The curing salt kind of confuses a lot of people. This is super simple. Give it a try. Miguel, my cousin at the sausage shop, and Letty, I want to thank you guys for sharing this recipe with us. And if you guys are ever in El Paso, make sure you guys stop by the sausage shop, bring a huge cooler, and take some of their sausages home. I hope you guys enjoyed this bratwurst video. If this is your first time to my channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Pit BBQ. See ya.